All right, welcome to episode 2 of Done This Week podcast. Special episode in that we're doing it on Halloween.
Yeah, the Halloween episodes. What are you dressed up as?
I'm Cameron Haynes. Keep hammering.
You actually killed the costume. I forgot that we were doing costumes until like 20 minutes ago. I'm dressed up as a generic motocross / mountain biker.
It's not bad. I actually owned all these clothing items, which is kind of sad, I guess. I really like camo. But we're at that like strange time where we're dressed up like a bit too early in the day where people are still looking at me strangely on the street. So, yeah.
I mean, you're in Toronto, so I gotta take the helmet off. It's getting in the way. But yeah, what did you? Let's start it off. What did you get done this week?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me, which was kind of more personal, less business, is that I moved this week, or at least I'm in the process of moving. Slowly but surely. It's been a terrible, annoying.
Well, at least it's all been it all worked out on the same timeline that you originally thought of.
Yeah. I mean, about this time last year, I thought I'd be moving, but yeah, no, it's been tough moving. But what I found interesting was around moving companies, because it's something I've never actually done before. First of all, I guess just growing up in a way that we always moved our stuff ourselves. Yeah. So I didn't even think I thought a moving company was only for the most elite people. So I'm thinking it's going to be insanely expensive. And I'm let me call up a moving company. And they're all somewhere around $1,000.
Oh, it's the cheapest thing in the entire world. And it's it's the most worth it.
It's so worth it.
Yeah, 100%.
You're going to injure yourself. You're going to damage something if you do it yourself. You're some walls, and it actually does pay for itself. But it was pretty interesting. So I had, so I was renting a condo. I'm now moving into a house that I bought. And my condo got listed on MLS or whatever. And a few days later, I realized I'm getting all these pamphlets from moving companies in my door. And I'm realizing I didn't even put two and two together in my head. I was just getting these pamphlets about moving companies. And I'm what are the odds? I've never gotten any information about a moving company. Suddenly I'm moving and I'm getting all these newsletters. And then I said that to someone, and they're well, obviously they're just scraping MLS to see people see new condos that are listed and then mailing to it, which is a pretty smart business development strategy.
Yeah, pretty solid lead gen.
Yeah.
So how did you end up choosing the company that you went with for moving?
Yeah. So the one that reached out sent a newsletter, reached out to them. There were 2 of those, and then just Googled a few. And what I found so interesting is they did all this work to get me in front of them and to reach out to them. And then I either got a voicemail, I called, and they're oh, well, you're on hold for a bit. And so we'll call you back when someone's available. And I'm this is so weird that they do all this effort to spend money and
to grab their leads
to get the lead, and then they're not properly actioning that lead. So I just started Googling around. I ended up going with 2 men in a truck, but it was literally from just calling the top 5 on Google, and the first to answer was the one that got the business. And what was interesting was they took payment over the phone. They lined up every single part of the job all on that initial phone call, which is just made me think for my business, how important speed to lead is. It makes, I picked entirely based on who was going to get to me first. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it just made me think within my company, are we the quickest to get back to people when they answer? Or do we answer the phone when they call? Are we there when they're available? And if they are ready to buy, do we take payment right away on that sales call or whatever? So it's just, yeah, it was interesting to see how much that actually affected my decision.
Well, I mean, it was the thing that actually enabled you to make the decision as well. If someone's calling you back, nobody's, pushing the actual deal forward. You actually can't even make the decision. And so it's an interesting thing. It's it's not even sales. It's actually just letting someone make the decision, giving them what they need to actually make the decision.
Right.
I found that whenever hiring these types of companies or jobs and things like that, whether it's a cleaning person or whatever, I've always just found that one, I don't actually want to get on the phone and call someone. Like I would really rather it be a chatbot where like they could like give me the options. I can read them. I can then look at my calendar and see what works. Cause like often it's like you're on the phone, like, oh, it is like 2:30 on Tuesday work. It's like, okay, I don't know. Like, let me walk to my computer or whatever it is. And so I've even thought just like, and my brother has like a window washing business, and it's just like, I feel like if you just put like an intercom chatbot and rank well with SEO and have a 24/7 support, department, you could 100% just like take over like entire cities. Like the same thing, just being like the speed to lead thing. And like, I just hate fucking getting on the phone with someone. And the biggest thing for me too is like, I also don't answer my phone unless like they're in my contacts. And so a lot of these places, they'll like take you down your information, like we'll give you a call back, and it's like, okay, well I don't answer my phone, I keep it on do not disturb 24/7. And so like now I have to like change my behavior, leave my phone off of do not disturb, and like start answering phone calls. And so that's the thing that always like gets in the way of me moving forward with one of these things.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because like there's also that like I'd rather, for something like this, I'd rather get on the phone and do it over the phone. So like everyone has their own preferences for how they want to like interact with the business. So like you really do have to have all those available and be quick on all those like different platforms. Some people want to email, chatbot, phone call. So it's interesting, but it's also interesting from like that business owner, whoever owns that moving company, is probably out there like scratching his head, like, why? Because it's a hard thing to really like know in your business, like how quick are people calling back, and like if you don't have like the proper like tools in place to monitor that or whatever, like you could be losing so much money in your business that like is just completely gone untracked.
Right, like 100%. Like one of those companies that sent you the newsletter, the owner of the business might be thinking like, oh, like this newsletter thing is like a waste of money, or like the quality of these leads, like, oh, the apartments on MLS are people who have already moved, and that might be the conclusion that he's drawing, but the actual like answer to the question is that, oh, actually you're just not fucking calling people back.
Right.
Which is kind of interesting, and there's probably like a million versions of that in our business. So is there anything like specific where you're like, for Wizza, that you're like, after this experience you want to change or implement to improve like speed to lead?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. We have a live chat. People come on that. We do offer like 24-hour support. But I do think like manning the phones is important. We've had this toll-free number that like I think just only goes to our voicemail, and we look at it like once a week. It's not used that often, but it did make me think about that. Which
is also like a really great gold mine of comedy. Is looking at your voicemail for like the Wizza number, which is hilarious.
Yeah. So Wizza has this person directory. So we publish people's, not their contact info, but like their basic info, like their name and where they work at. And so people, when they search up names, like if you search Zach Murray email, you might come across our directory page. It gets us a lot of traffic, but it creates a lot of confusion that people are thinking like, oh, this is Zach's number because it's like the Wizza number. And so we get some of the craziest phone calls that maybe we'll put it like on some of our social channels.
I mean, some of the hardest I've ever laughed like, consistently are like listening to some of these calls that come through. Like the most notable ones was like one guy who thought that this woman hacked her and stole his phone, and like was like 100% thought that like Wizza was her employer. And then the other one that I remember, it was a mother reaching out about her son, who was like a prospective rapper, and she really believed in her like son's rap future and like really just wanted to get connected with a record label.
There was a father that lost track of his son because his phone was all messed up.
That one was insane. It's like, oh, I haven't talked to my son in 10 years.
Yeah, because my phone was messed
up.
But
then he found his son's what he thought his son's phone number was on the Wizard directory, and is like trying to track down his son after 10 years. The world's a crazy place.
But and then I think the other learning from it was like that in that call with two men, they basically at some point where it's like, oh, do you want to just get this sorted now and just like give me your credit card number now over the phone? Whereas I still may have like, if they didn't do that and they were like, oh, I'll email you a quote. If I had gotten a call back from one of the others, I may have taken that. So like just the importance of like, if someone's ready, like always ask for the sale. Like if you have that opportunity to ask for the sale on that first call, just lock it in then and there. It sometimes feels a bit uncomfortable on like a demo or a sales call to be like, do you want to just do this now? Do you want to just give me your credit card now? But like a large percentage of people are going to do it. And you know how often you do a sales demo and then the person kind of disappears, even though they were so interested.
Into it. Yeah.
So yeah, it was interesting.
Cool.
How about you? What'd you get done this week?
This week was like big. We launched our mobile app, which I'm super excited about. It's kind of just a mobile version of our web app platform. So it's like nothing crazy, but it definitely serves like a pretty solid pain point, which was a lot of people were just finding advertising inspiration while scrolling through like Instagram or TikTok. And there wasn't like a great way of like saving it to their 4Play swipe file before having a mobile app. And we even I talked to some customers that had like a VA where like most of their job was just they would forward the ad to the VA, and the VA would then go and find that ad in Facebook ad library and save it using our tool. And so it's kind of cool that now, I mean, maybe we're putting this VA out of work, but like it's definitely like an actual like pain point, not a vitamin. So that feels good to release it. Some like key learnings in terms of like launching an iOS app. One, Apple approval always takes longer than what you think. Like I knew in the back of my head, because I've been through this a couple times before, that it was going to take a lot longer than I had thought. But again, you just always underestimate it. Like, oh, it can't take more than 2 weeks. It can't take more than 3 weeks. And then you do the submission. So what that resulted in is us just doing a public beta now through test flight rather than the public app store, which is probably pretty good. If I'm being honest, like we probably shouldn't have skipped that stage. I was just kind of excited to get it out. And we're big fans of just like shipping and doing it live. And
how long has it been been waiting for approval on the App Store?
Now we're at like 2 weeks without even like a reply.
Wow.
So that we haven't even done like the first exchange yet. And so we're just trying to even get to like the first stage, which is always like the longest one. But I just always like found that this process was just like horrible. And I just don't understand why like Apple doesn't make it better. Like everything in terms of experience for Apple is usually like amazing. And like, I don't think that the like developer pool is that big. Like it's definitely large, but it's not unmanageable because it's not free, right? You need to pay the $100 to even submit an app.
Right.
And so like everything that's being submitted is probably a lot of shit, but like it's not like a public, sort of like form that needs to be like managed. And so I've always just been like super surprised about how hard they make that, or not even hard, just like annoying, slow and things like that. And the other thing that like it reminded me as well when we were going through like the last few stages of getting it into the public beta was how important it is, in my opinion, to get like a workable prototype in your hands and like feeling it in the flesh like sooner than later. We had like designed the entire app out with like Figma, which like allows you to build like prototypes. But it's like not live data, and at the end of the day, like the quicker that you can act, and like that's great, and it helps you make some decisions. But it really just like reminded me that prototypes are still prototypes, and like getting a working app that you can start testing as soon as possible actually allows you to make the decisions that you need to make, and like the important decisions. And if you wait too long, then I think you kind of corner yourself in a place where you're like, we need to launch, but you know that it doesn't feel right. And it was like, I've always talked about like software in a way that sometimes it just has a feeling, and you should be like optimizing for that feeling, and it's hard to do that with prototypes or emulators and things like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm jealous. I wish we had like a software that like an app made sense, because it's just so cool and like feels
tangible. Real.
Yeah,
because you actually like hold it in your hand. I would say there's definitely like a lot of things I want to do to like make the app better. Like this is definitely like an MVP, solves the direct pain point. But just from like even an onboarding experience, like I would love for it to feel like a top tier consumer app, even though it's like probably unnecessary, but I just think like it's a fun exercise to do. And I think there'll be like a lot of learnings even for like our web app onboarding experience, which I think could also use a good amount of work. Have you been traveling at all lately?
I have. I went to New York Tech Week, I guess 2 weeks ago now, because it's been a while since our last episode. It was good. Met some people, like a lot of these events, like it was fun to go to. Is there like that much ROI? Probably not, but it was good to just like go back to New York.
If you had to draw a tangible ROI, what would they be?
I mean, I think I don't know. I don't know if I could, to be honest.
Okay.
Like at least today. Yeah, like I'm sure maybe long term, potentially something. I mean, I will say I do think we're thinking about like event sponsorship stuff now, because I think the experience that they get from these events is really strong. We got a lot of like follow-up email from sponsors that I think would be valuable for us. So I think just like that perspective of sponsoring and getting those like leads from it would be interesting. So yeah, thinking about that.
Yeah, we've done like some event sponsorship, and getting like the email list is like actually like a tangible value that you get in like attending the event. It's kind of like you have like screenshots of people's like LinkedIn profiles. Like, I'm gonna follow this person, but yeah, like especially with you, like you have like a full sales team built out, like just like getting those like super warm lead lists, and you're reaching out to people who saw like Wizza on like the banner, and it's like it is like now a warm lead rather than like a cold lead. So I think yeah, as long as the events are in the right circles. Luckily, like I feel like can sell to almost any industry.
Right.
Yeah,
is, like,
that pretty nice.
Definitely helps. Yeah, and then went to Miami for a wedding, which I guess you were in Miami at the same time. And
yeah, randomly ended up being in Miami at the same time. Didn't see each other. So Miami, I like text you like for a bunch of like cool shit to do, and then I get a text back like 3 days later being like, I've just been drinking for like 3 days.
I've been drinking my face off at this wedding for 3 days. Yeah.
When I was in Miami, though, I had so I went with I had a friend here in Toronto just for a day. He came for a Shopify event. It's Noah from Social Snowball. It's like a Shopify app. And he was here for a day. He said he was going to Miami the next day, and I needed to be in Arizona on like the Monday, and he was here on the Friday. So he's like, come back to Miami. So I went to Miami just for the weekend, get some sun, because Toronto's quickly becoming a miserable place to be. But when I was there, he took me to this place. He was like talking about it the whole time. He's like, you're going to love this place. You're going to love this place. And he was 100% right. It's called Lagniappe. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I'm calling it Lagniappe. And I 100%.
How do you spell it?
I have no idea.
You have no idea.
I have
Okay.
no idea. Like
right.
Linggape. Anyway, it's like a hole in the wall looking place in Miami, in like Wynwood, I think. And essentially you walk in, and this is like, I don't like going out to like traditional bars and clubs. Like, this is my shit. And so I really want to bring this back to Toronto. You essentially walk in, it's kind of like a storefront with like a bunch of sort of eclectic vintage couches, like cool wall art and things like that. On the right side, there's 3 fridges. There's a fridge with white wine. There's a fridge with like cured meats, and a fridge with cheeses, and then red wine just on the walls, not refrigerated. And so you grab what you want, but like what you're grabbing out of the fridges in terms of meats and cheeses are like wrapped as if you'd get them at like a butcher or something like that. Like, it's not like, and so you go to the front, you buy your wine, you buy your meats and cheeses, and they ask, oh, like, do you want this like made up? And like, you say yes. And so they take your meats and cheeses, you go to the back. It's like an absolutely immaculate vibe of just like chill couches, sort of picnic tables, a little bit grungy, but also really nice with like hanging lights. Everybody's like smoking cigarettes, so it feels like Europe. And you just like wait for them to text you and bring you like your meats and cheeses, and then you just drink your wine. And it's like a super chill place where you could go and just like enjoy yourself. You could also turn it into a party, which I really liked. And what I really when I was like trying to think, why did I like this place so much? And I think it's like an interesting thing to think about what customers like when participating in something that you would consider an experience. And it's like they like participating in the experience, but they don't want to participate in the labor. And so, for example, like I like that I just chose and not from a menu. Like the fact that I went into the fridge, I had this like contemplation period with the people I was with, and like we were trying to like, that was a whole sort of event where there's like jokes made and like an experience. You then bring it to them, they take care of the labor, and then you get to enjoy it on the experience. And so that was the thing that I kind of like took from it, was if something is an experience, like allow people to participate in the experience as much as possible, rather than, and then just only take care of the labor, because nobody ever wants to do the labor at all. And so even just like thinking about like software, it's like, how can you make a onboarding feel customized as if the video that you're going to give them for onboarding, they chose that one because it's like relevant to them. And like actively participating in the experience, I think is like a good rule if you're trying to make something feel delightful and memorable as well.
Right.
If we had just went to a restaurant, sat down, I look at the menu, there's a charcuterie board, and I order the charcuterie board, we order wines, and we sit there, I'm not talking as passionately about it because I didn't participate in it. Right. And so that's what I really, really liked about it. And Yeah, I want to bring it. I want to bring it here.
Yeah, we should. No, yeah, it's like restaurants when they bring out like meats or whatever, and
Right,
you like
the
see
steak.
and touch it, or like desserts. They actually bring out like all of them, or like Starbucks just got rid of. Remember how they used to always have like the one of each sandwich like in the glass box, and now it's just like
The
little cue
cardboard.
cards.
Yeah.
Little cue cards telling you like what it is.
I mean, I think Starbucks, I don't know if it's like this in the rest of the world. Like it might just be Canada. But after COVID, Starbucks went to absolute shit.
100%.
In terms of experience.
100%.
They removed the ability to add your own milk or like cinnamon and nutmeg. And like sometimes the cinnamon nutmeg, I didn't know I was going to add it until I got there, you know? Like I don't want to ask share and be like, just a little bit of cinnamon, like just a little bit of nutmeg. Like I'm just like, give me the black coffee, and it's like less of an experience.
100.
They've also here removed most all of the indoor seating, which they did during COVID just to make it like efficient, but they never brought it back. Like I used to go to Starbucks like often to work,
right?
And like I haven't, you can't anymore. Like there's like maybe one or two in the city, but it's still starting to feel like a Tim Hortons, like where it's just like people waiting in line, like construction workers, like everyone's miserable. It's actually
worse in a way. I actually get, because of the mobile ordering and everything, when I'm at Starbucks, especially when I'm waiting, I'm like, this is basically like a glorified factory. Like,
100%.
And 1-2 people are making like 30 drinks for people that aren't even there. Yeah. They basically like are an e-commerce like pickup like zone. Like it's become like very strange, and
it's also just like, why are when you actually really think about it, like someone's ordering the app and they're going and they're just like picking up their order, like why are we even paying a human to do that? Like when you look at like Starbucks drinks, they're actually not complex at all. They're all based on like syrups and ice,
right?
And mostly ice.
It could be a machine,
and you could literally be a machine. And so like maybe that's the future of Starbucks. It's just like like what are those, the Coke freestyle machines? Like I would honestly feel like that would be a better experience than like, I don't know, some blue-haired person making my fucking latte or something. But
do you like Korean barbecue?
I love Korean barbecue.
Okay.
You hate it, don't you?
I despise. Yeah. Like, and it's kind of like what you were saying before.
It's the opposite. You're participating in the labor.
I hate anywhere where I have to participate in any of the labor, even if it's like cute. Like, I just don't find it fun at all. And I just feel like it's like, why am I here? Like I can make this at home.
But you can't make it at home. That's the thing. It's like you got to get all the meats. You have to like cut them up. I don't like Korean barbecue for the whatever. For the making. I like it. I like the food. It's like chill. Like I do like when people are all kind of like a part of the same thing, rather than just like ordering meals and like sitting and talking. Like it's kind of fun. Like if you're like sharing, or like even when I go to a restaurant, like I would prefer like everybody orders stuff and then like everybody share. Like, I prefer that than the opposite. So I think that's what I like about it.
I'm a everyone get their own stuff type of guy.
I know you are.
Because I like, for me, it's like I know exactly what I want, and like I
know exactly what I want for my main. But like appetizers and things like that, it's really hard for me to decide. And like most of the time, I don't want like an entire calamari. I just want like, 2 bites of a calamari.
That's fair.
Same thing with dessert. Like it's a little bit too gluttonous to order a
full dessert. Yeah. 100%.
Do you have any new business ideas or things you come across?
I don't know if it's necessarily an idea, but with moving this week, I've been thinking a lot about like, I moved, but I also did a whole renovation, and one of my friends is actually the contractor, and I was just thinking like, it's such an interesting business because it's the one area where people will literally spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, like people that never anywhere else in their life would spend that amount of money, and they'll spend it into their home, and you don't hear any startups or any like new companies entering like the renovation space or like even like the home in general. And I feel like it's a massive opportunity for disruption. And I kind of like expanded that out as like, what are the biggest areas that people spend money on, or like where do people personally spend, they can spend like upwards of $50,000 on. It's basically their car, their post-secondary education, their house. Was that it?
Wedding you have.
The wedding is another thing that people spend a lot of money on, and all these areas, no one's really disrupted.
Do you think? I mean, I think a lot of the ones that you've listed here,
Yeah.
except for home, I think we've been very much co-opted into spending money on them. Like I think a lot of people spend more money on their car than like they should. Like if we talk about like general population,
Right.
I think a lot of people spend more money on their wedding than they should. Like most people won't go on like a nice vacation, but then will spend like 6 figures on a wedding.
Right.
That's silly. And like most people that are at your wedding don't even want to be at your wedding. And then formal education. I mean, I think it's like, like both of us dropped out,
Right.
and like I think a lot of our friends that didn't drop out aren't in better places. So
Right.
I think all of those are just like we've been convinced that they matter, or convinced that we should spend money on them. And so I think potentially the reasons why they haven't been disrupted is like it's pretty hard to find the value like matrix of like here's where you have like all of the value, and then here's like where we're disrupting it. Right. I think like on the car side of things, like Elon's done a great job of like the distribution. Like I know you hate going to car dealerships. It's like the thing that you hate the most of buying a car. And so like Elon fixed that piece. It's like, yeah, if you know what car you want, like just go online, order it, get financing directly on the website. And it's like just plain and clear. You're not talking to some fucking guy trying to sell you a car.
Right.
Which, funny enough, I was working out with my buddy the other day, and we were just like, I don't know how it came up, like car salesmen and commissions. And we were looking at like how much money like a car salesman makes, and this is just literally what happens. Like this is just the answer from Google, but we read it. It was like, oh, they get 25 to 30% of net profit on the car, and we were like, that seems like really fucking high, like incredibly high. But then we looked up what the actual gross profit to the dealership of a like we were just like, hey, what's like a normal car, like a Volkswagen Jetta,
Right.
and it was like their gross profit is like 3.2%.
Yeah, it's not huge.
And so like that's before like they pay for like the entire lot of like all that land, before they pay like the electricity, before they pay like their lease or whatever it is, like their mortgage on the land and stuff like that. And so we were like, oh yeah, like if you sell a Volkswagen Jetta, like you're like only making like $300, $400.
Yeah.
And we were like, wow,
The
like,
margins are incredibly tight on cars.
it makes you think like, why is there even a human being there selling it to you? Like it just doesn't even seem like it's justified enough to have a human there, like on like that low of a margin product. And like most people know what car they want. Like most people just need to test drive the car and don't need to be sold. Like the only, I guess, like place maybe is like if you're ordering a brand new car for like options, they can probably like wring a bit more out of you.
I think like the options help, and then like the service after that happens at the dealership.
Yeah, that's where they make money. And let's circle back to like one of the lies that I told last week. So I had mentioned that Porsche doesn't make any money off of their cars. It's actually the complete opposite. They have the highest like gross profit per car out of any other car company. And so their average sale price is around $90,000 across their entire lineup. And they average, I think it was like $17,000 of net profit on each car, it's like double to triple what other like even like luxury brands are. And I looked up why. It was like someone did like analysis on it, and it was that one, nobody's like looking for a deal on a Porsche, just like generally the buyer's market, because they know that the servicing costs will be higher in like the future, so no one's looking for the deal. And so a lot less people are buying during their sales cycle like seasons, and they're not selling as many units at discount. And then the other thing was that 90% of Porsches are ordered and optioned. And so there's options on almost every 90% of cars that they sell, which is kind of like an interesting thing, where other brands, I guess they're selling like a lot more just like base models that they're discounting.
Yeah. Also, I've noticed like, because I've spec'd out Porsches online, and like the options are insanely expensive.
They also have the best spec build your own platform out of like any other car company by far.
100%.
I always found it crazy, like when I was like speccing a GT3 RS like probably like 2 weeks ago, and they have like the base press colors for the year. Then they have essentially a paint to sample, which is like paints that they've released over the years, and then they have like custom paint option. And what's crazy is like just based on the trim level of the car as well, the paint to sample option goes higher. So if you if you like, for example, like a base 911 paint to sample, I think it's like $20,000, and and it's like you're painting a 911. But if you're painting the 911, that's the GT3 RS, it's like $40,000, and it's like the actual process and all that kind of stuff. It's just a percentage of the it's a percentage of the list price of the car, which I thought was like unapologetically awesome.
But I have noticed, back to the car dealership thing, anecdotally, like just when I've seen like people that were like very rich and just like figured out what they do, I've just noticed a lot of people make a lot of money owning car dealerships. So somewhere in that model, there's a lot of money to be made. I think
it's like MRR, ARR. It's on
right.
It's on servicing. Like I don't know what the payout to like a service mechanic is, but like, I'm assuming it's like, I don't know, let's say a mechanic makes like $100,000 a year or something. But they're charging you like, I don't know, like the hourly rate at like a car dealership is probably $300 to $500 an hour. So it's like they have like a massive markup on labor. Everybody needs to get their car, serviced somewhere. And so I think that they're just like making all their money on like a long tail of servicing, and cars break. Like that's like, speaking about like disruption of like home as well. I think when you're talking about renovations and things like that, I think the other sort of like weird variable in which it's hard to find like scale and value is that it's all based on skilled labor as well. And so you can only like if someone wanted to build like a platform to hire like really good contractors, eventually you've hired all the good contractors and now you're only left with like B-level contractors. And so I think it's like just an inherently hard thing to scale, especially if you're trying to scale it kind of like value-based, which I think most like quote unquote disruptive industries try to do. And I think, but where I have seen like a lot of, I guess, like innovation, like something I've been looking at recently is I want to buy like vacant land, like 2 to 3 hours away from Toronto, and then drop like a prefab home on it, just as like a little getaway with a Starlink, and just like be able to have a place to work from outside of the city. And like there's a ton of like really awesome prefab options now. And I've like whatever, that's what I'm spending a lot of my nights doing right now, is like watching like tours of these like prefab home factories and things like that. And all I can think about when I'm watching these is just like, oh, like this is such a better way to build a home. Like it makes sense that all of the skilled labor is in one place. All of the materials are in one place. It's
indoors.
It's indoors. There's no elements. They're building like the same thing over and over again with like variables. Like in this, it's the assembly line. And so it's like, I mean, like Henry Ford talked about the assembly like a long time ago. Like I don't know, it should be applied to homes, especially because if you even look at, for example, when large communities are built out in like different suburbs, like now they're just ended up being cookie cutter homes anyway. Right. And so I feel like it totally makes sense to be kind of like centralizing all of the labor, all of the resources in one place, and then just like dropping these homes where they need to be.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, the subdivision model is similar. They're just like bringing that work somewhere. Right. But I think like at the higher end of the market, people want something like entirely custom. I will say, I think when I sell my company, I'm going to I've always wanted to do some sort of robotics company. And I think there's many trades that can be done by like a robot. Like I just actually was watching a video the other day of like a robot hanging drywall. Robots can paint. So I think like if you had like a full home renovation robot, it sounds crazy, but like there's no reason why, these are skilled. It's just like skilled labor, but if you watch someone do it, it's not that hard to like do most of these tasks. And I think you could build like a pretty insane robot for like all of these tasks and like drastically bring down the cost of home renovation as a whole.
I agree with that. I remember you talking about the robot thing a while ago, and I feel like you were still trying to figure out, like at the time you're like, oh, like made. And I'm just like, well, like maybe. Like I think that like that just seems like it seems like a little bit too simple. I think that one makes like a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because I think it also is quote unquote skilled labor. And even if it's like even if the robot does like the first 90% of hanging the drywall, right, and then there's just like errors that people need to go in and fix to make it perfect. And you just like almost like paying for the overages of the efficiency. I think it makes a ton of sense. And like the same way, the amount of times when your house was being renovated, I would just like drive past it because I was going somewhere, like, oh, like nothing's happening. Yeah. And like even when you look at all of the construction going on in the city, it's like often when you drive past it, nothing's happening. Right.
It could be happening 24 hours, and you could have things could be built a lot quicker, and then the whole world moves a lot faster. But like, I find robots have really broken into like the industrial world with like, you know, factories and warehouses and stuff like that, but like not in our personal lives at all, like shockingly low. And maybe that's going to change in the next few years. And maybe with like AI, it enables a lot more with the robots, but like, yeah, I think there's so much opportunity there, and that's like the next technological like big shift that we're gonna see.
Yeah. All right. Okay. When you build the robot, I'll take one.
Okay.
Yeah. Still like in speaking of ideas, so I've after last week's episode when we had talked about this idea of almost like pledging your life insurance policy towards like an end of life experience, I really like kind of like the idea. I think a lot of people spend the last years of their life like holding on for dear life, but not like living at all. And I think a lot of people are in a position where like they can't kind of just like ball out. But a lot of people have life insurance policies that are like $1 million or something like that. And so I like this idea of like potentially, I've also just generally thought that like leaving legacy money to like family and stuff like that is kind of like a silly thing to do. And so like I like this idea of like leveraging your life insurance policy while you're living and just like fully like spending all of the money at like some sort of multiple. So like the way I'm thinking about it, and I don't know if this is legal at all, because I looked it up, and so you can borrow money. I just have some notes here. You can borrow money against universal life insurance policies, which are essentially life insurance policies that just like you put cash into them, they're invested into like equities or in things like that, and they're just like an investment vehicle that people can like loan against. And like that's what like a lot of like billionaires do is like I remember I was listening to a podcast with Neil Patel, and he was saying that he puts like $200,000 a month into a life insurance policy and then just borrows against it because it's tax free.
Right.
And so, but then I was looking up, so like what most people have are like term policies where it's you pay a certain amount up front or for over like 20 years, and then whenever the term is over, you know, there's like a certain payout or you have to re-up. You can't borrow against term policies. Those are just like predicated on you dying. So I think it'd be kind of interesting if, let's just say you had a life insurance policy that's going to pay out like $1 million. If a company will, like, one thing you need to manage here is like cash flow and things like that, which like could be really, really hard, and like predicting people's like when they're going to die and things like that. But I've heard life insurance companies have more of that information than anybody. And so I think what would be cool is like if you had $1 million, if you could like loan $700,000 out against it. But I think the flip side that we could be cool, and where there could be also like more meat on the bone for whoever is like running this sort of business, is it would need to potentially be spent on experiences through their spending partners in the same way that a credit card points need to be. So instead of just like taking the money out and then it's or things like that, like what if you could just convert your life insurance policy, like $1 million with your life insurance policy on the front end converts into $1 million worth of experiences, but their cost of service on the $1 million worth of experiences is lower because it's like half that or whatever it is. I think could be like an interesting thing. And then they're left with like whenever that person dies, they collect on the life insurance policy maybe. And then, you know, maybe some of these people like only went on 4 trips or something like that, but they pledged like their entire life insurance policy to it. But like they lived the rest of their life the way that they wanted to,
right,
with an incredible amount of autonomy and freedom. I don't know. I think it's an interesting idea.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you'd have that, but what if people outlive their term and you never collect?
That would be your breakage. What do you mean outlive their term? Outlive the term of the life insurance policy. Yeah. So maybe you only take it on, these are like the details.
Kinks.
There's some kinks to this, but like potentially it could be that you just open up your own life insurance like firm, and then people who buy life insurance through you have this option to spend the life insurance, and then you make money on like breakage, which I think like all of these companies have like a ton of it. So
right. I mean, I do definitely generally agree with like, I don't see the value in like passing on money, because from what I've seen in my life, for people who like are expecting a lot of money or something from like a parent, they lead worse lives because they're just like waiting or lazy or like, you know, not being them true selves. And so like, yeah, I mean, I definitely will not
Well, you're eliminating the downside risk of being lazy.
Right.
When you have that as like an outcome.
Right.
I don't know, but sometimes I think about it and like I wonder, like, would you wish your life on your kids exactly?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I like my life, but
I like my life. I just don't know if I would wish it like exactly.
I mean, would I want it to be? Sure, there could be some improvements, but I think like I would be happy if my kids had my life. Just like overall, like but why?
I'm just like, so I've been like thinking about this like a little bit recently, and like I've always like had this idea like I'm not going to leave them money, but I feel like it would be like really hard to like not spoil your kids.
Yeah, I think
because like it's like fun. Like there's like a level of like enjoyment. Like for me, like I don't actually like I don't get like a lot of joy like spending money on myself, and we've had conversations about this, but like I do like sharing experiences with other people. And so then you think about your family, it's like, oh, like I'm really like, if I would think about like the peak of like people to like share experiences with, it'd be like your family.
Right.
And so then it becomes like, okay, like when does this become like out of hand?
Right.
And if, I don't know, let's just say everything works out and we end up both being in like the Centi-millionaire, category. I don't think I'm going to want to spend my 50s and 60s. I just be like, I'm going to do it.
Right.
And like, you're coming with me.
Right.
And it's like, that's going to like somehow co-opt them in some sort of way. If like they're spending every summer in the south of France with you.
Right.
And like, are you going to say that they can't come on the yacht? Or, like,
right.
like some of it isn't just the money. It's like the expectation of like lifestyle and things like that. And I think that's the hard part.
Yeah. No, I think like a lot of people have like, for example, like Donald Trump's kids seem to be like pretty ambitious and
that's true.
Hardworking. And so like, I think you can expose people or your kids to like a certain lifestyle without giving them that security of, oh, I'm going to give you all of this. I think it was, I don't know if it was Bill Gates or Warren Buffett, but they both of them, maybe they've pledged their money all to charity. Like their kids aren't getting any of their money. And I think that like, at least that expectation being set of like, you might have some of these things now, but if you want to like keep this lifestyle that you might like, you're going to have to figure out something on your own because like, I'm not just like handing.
Yeah. I mean, it could actually be like a stronger motivator than just like not having it at all.
100%. I always said like, I went to private school, and so like a lot of kids in my school were a lot like wealthier than we were, and so like just being able to like see some of those things and being like, oh, I want that, like I can't have that from like a young age, I think is very motivating.
Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't go to private school. I grew up in like a really small town where like everybody was just like normal. But I think when I moved to Toronto, I started being like, oh, like I always wanted like a lot in my life, like
right.
That never like. But I think I remember I had like my first like rich friend when I moved to Toronto, and I was just like, I would like go over to their house, and I was just like, wow, this is cool. Like, you guys have like a car elevator, and like they'd acted like it was like normal. And I was just like, what are you fucking talking about? And like ever since then, I've wanted a car elevator. So yeah, no, I agree with that. I think parenting in general is like a hard thing, whether you're just trying to like get by or if you're trying to like not fuck it up.
Yeah,
and I think it becomes like a lot less clear when like you have like a ton of resources on like how to not fuck it up.
Yeah. No, and I think it's totally like neither of us have kids. Like I think it's totally
not that we know of
different when you have kids. Yeah, I know.
I think the only other thing we have here. Oh, you had mentioned that you were watching some documentary on Juul.
Yes. What was my point on that again? Oh, right. No, I remember. Yeah. So have you seen this Juul documentary?
I haven't seen the Juul documentary. Okay. I know what Juul
You know what Juul is. Okay. Yeah. It's a really good documentary. It's on Netflix. You should watch it. So basically, Juul starts out. It's two Stanford kids. They're really inspired by Apple. They were actually at the school when like Steve Jobs went and did the commencement speech at Stanford. And they were both smokers. They wanted to create like the iPhone of cigarettes, and that's what Juul was. And their mission originally was to get people to stop smoking. And I guess there's 1 billion smokers around the world, so their mission was to save 1 billion lives. So they set out to create the first Juul. It's not a very good product. They make a second version. They end up raising money along the way with that like mission of like, we're going to stop 1 billion people from smoking. We're going to disrupt this industry. They create this product called the PAX, which was...
I have a PAX.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Is it
super
for,
cool. I didn't
for
know
marijuana?
Juul, I didn't know Juul made the PAX.
Okay, yeah. So they made this product with the intention of people putting tobacco in it and it having that Juul effect from the tobacco. What ended up happening is cannabis users started using it, and it became like a very successful product in like the weed market, and they became a very like successful business within that niche. What I found interesting at that point in the documentary was like, at that point they had a successful business on their hands, like they had product market fit, but their investors forced them to go after that nicotine market because that's what they signed. You know, they signed up for $100 billion business. They're like, we didn't sign up for, you know, a $500 million.
Yeah, something that's just like in a head shop. And
yeah. So even though that could have been something substantial and like they were already on that path, I found it kind of inspiring that like, and just like a good lesson of like, never let a smaller success get in the way of a much larger potential success. So I found that really interesting. Anyway, they go on to...
So did they sell packs?
It doesn't specify what they ended up doing with packs,
okay,
but they basically shifted their focus to create that Juul product that they eventually created. But yeah, it's a super interesting documentary and like an interesting business case study. I think they made both the original founders a similar story to a lot of startups where the board essentially demoted both of them. At one point, they were both CEOs. They were just like, they were both demoted and the board was running the company. There was no CEO.
I feel like that's like the biggest
fear
of all time. I'd be like so mad. Like that's I probably shouldn't say this on a podcast. Like that's the thing where I could see myself killing someone. Like that'd be like the put over the line where you just like, you took this fucking from me, like, you're gonna fucking die. Like I couldn't imagine like not doing that.
Yeah.
Or some, you know, like.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think it depends on, did you fuck up in a way that's like, okay, I understand why the board made this decision and it's the right thing for the company. Because I think a lot of times with, you know, it's happened to Uber, WeWork, they usually fucked up.
Right.
And like, it's usually not like, oh, they were like running their company honorably and then like the board decided to kick them out. I think in this case, like these two guys were both product designers. They weren't CEOs. And it was pretty clear, like they were playing some interviews and like some of the answers this guy had was hilarious. There was this one question where they were like, oh, is the Juul better than smoking? And he's like, well, like some people prefer smoking. If you prefer smoking, just smoke. You don't have to use the Juul. It's like just such a bad answer. So yeah, but a really interesting company and honestly an insanely mission-driven company, which I think helped them scale. Like every single one of those initial employees were smokers or like a parent died from cancer related to smoking. And so like, they all seem to be very aligned around the mission of like quitting smoking. And obviously in the end, it kind of, you know, got clouded by like this thing of like, you know, kids started using it and it created this like epidemic. But like in general, I think it did help a lot of people quit smoking. And so, yeah, it was interesting.
All right, maybe I'll watch it this weekend then.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think this is a good spot to wrap it up. That's been the second episode I've done this week, Halloween edition.
Yeah.
Everybody stay safe, check your candy while you're trick-or-treating, and we'll see you next time we do this.
See ya.